She falls for a man who promises love and care, but soon her world begins to crumble. Slowly, she loses herself to his control and manipulation. This is a story of fighting for freedom and finding herself again. Welcome to the Echoes of the Past channel. Don't forget to subscribe. He said he loved me every single day. He whispered it in the morning before I opened my eyes. He texted it in the middle of the day, sometimes with a heart emoji. He said it at night when we were curled up on the couch. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was everything I thought love looked like. He opened doors for me. He remembered the smallest things I said. He surprised me with my favorite coffee and once drove 3 hours just to see me smile. It felt like something out of a movie. He'd say things like, "You're not like other girls. I've never felt this way before. You're the only person who really understands me." Our first dates were like magic. A rooftop dinner under fairy lights. Late night walks where we held hands and talked about our dreams. He played my favorite songs in the car and looked at me like I was the most beautiful person in the world. And I loved how he made me feel seen, wanted, special. Looking back now, I realize how fast it all happened. He wanted to spend every moment with me, texted constantly, called me his girl after only a week. But at the time it felt like passion, intensity, like maybe this was the kind of love people write books about. He started asking little questions, innocent things at first. "Who were you texting just now? Do you really like going out with your friends so often? That guy at work, he seems a little too friendly, don't you think?" I didn't see it as jealousy. I saw it as protection. Like he cared about me so much, he just didn't want to lose me. And when he told me he didn't like the dress I was wearing because it was too revealing, I thought, maybe he's just being respectful. Maybe he's trying to protect me from the wrong kind of attention. So I changed. I put the dress back in the closet, texted my friend to say I wasn't coming out tonight, and he smiled, kissed my forehead, said, "Thank you, baby. I just want to keep you safe." That became our pattern. I would bend. He would reward me with affection. Every time I adjusted myself to his liking, I felt loved, cherished. But I didn't realize that I was slowly disappearing, piece by piece. At first I thought I was choosing love. Now I know I was surrendering myself without even knowing it. With each passing day he became more insistent. At first his requests seemed like care. He would tell me he was worried about me, that he was concerned for my mental health. And I lacked the courage to ask myself the questions. Am I really that vulnerable? Is it true that I can't trust anyone but him? Over time, I stopped seeing my friends. My old relationships began to fade. When we were together, I felt that he was all I needed, and the friends who once seemed so important no longer mattered. He said it was okay, that love wasn't just about romance, but also about care, and he cared about me. He said I needed to rest more, spend less time with others because I might lose focus. He kept bringing up my old habits, like spending time with friends who, according to him, came into my world too often. I started deleting old photos from social media. I acted the way he wanted because he said it was for my own good. He convinced me that if I truly loved him, I should prioritize his interests. He told me that only then would I be truly happy. Maybe he was right. After all, he loved me so much, and I loved him, so I trusted him. But I started losing myself. Not immediately, of course. It happened slowly. He deleted my social media accounts. I didn't even remember the last time I logged into them. My phone became his phone. He gave me a new one with limited access. Only a few contacts, his, my mom's, and my doctor's. He said it was important for my mental health, that the world was too toxic, and that he needed to protect me. I couldn't argue. Whenever I tried, he would respond, "I don't want you to be used. You're too trusting. You don't understand that people can be bad and they will always let you down." This sense of responsibility for my well-being began to sound like an excuse for his actions. Every time I disagreed, he would gently but firmly convince me that I simply didn't understand how dangerous the world was. He said he was the only one who could protect me, that I was too naive and didn't see how people manipulated me. I started doubting myself more and more. What if he's right? Am I really that naive? Is the world really as dangerous as he says? He kept reminding me that I couldn't exist without him, and I believed him. At some point, I couldn't remember the last time I genuinely laughed. I couldn't remember the last time I felt joy in the simple things. I began to forget what it felt like to simply be myself. Every day, I became smaller and smaller until I disappeared completely. I forgot who I was before him. I forgot what my dreams were, what my real desires were. I was only his reflection, his shadow. And one day, I realized I no longer knew how to be the woman I was before. He told me I was becoming better, that I looked more beautiful, but there was something empty in his words. I realized I didn't love myself. I didn't love who I had become, but I didn't know how to go back. I stopped recognizing the girl in the mirror. At first it was subtle. I didn't even notice when my smile began to fade, when I started feeling small. The light in my eyes dimmed slowly until it wasn't there at all, and I thought maybe it was just stress. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe it was the pressure from work. Maybe it was nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That I was wrong. I stopped laughing, really laughing. I began to smile only when he smiled at me. I started to speak less. I didn't even notice when I stopped making decisions for myself. I used to pick my outfits with excitement, choosing what made me feel good. But then, I started picking what he liked instead. I wore the things he told me looked good on me, even though they didn't make me feel comfortable. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to keep him happy. I just wanted him to love me. Every day felt the same. He'd get home, ask how my day was, and if I wasn't at my best, he'd reassure me. "Don't worry, I'm here now. You'll feel better soon." And I believed him. For a while, I thought I had everything I needed. I thought I was happy because he told me I was. I started avoiding mirrors. It became harder to look at myself. Who was I anymore? He told me what to think, what to say. He even chose the shows we watched together. If I disagreed, he'd say it was because I didn't understand the deeper meaning of things. "You'll get it one day, trust me." So I stopped questioning. My world became smaller. I stopped texting friends. I stopped calling them. They noticed. They asked, "Are you okay?" And I'd smile, telling them everything was fine, but it wasn't, and I didn't know how to tell them. I didn't know how to explain that the man I loved was taking pieces of me every single day. I didn't realize that I was isolating myself, and I didn't care, because when I was with him I felt safe. When I was alone I felt empty. One evening, he looked at me in a way that made my heart race. It wasn't the usual loving look, it was possessive. "Why don't you ever want to go out with me anymore?" he asked, his voice low. "I'm here, and you're always distracted. You're always thinking about other people." I didn't know how to respond. I just said, "I'm sorry, I'll try harder." But deep down I didn't know what he wanted from me anymore. I was already giving him everything I had. Then came the day he locked the door from the outside. He told me it was for safety, for my protection. I didn't even question it. I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel fear. I just waited. I waited for him to come back. He promised he would. He said he'd be back soon. But soon turned into hours, and then hours turned into days. I tried calling, but my phone was in his name. I couldn't even make a call without his permission. I couldn't leave. I was trapped in a house I didn't even recognize anymore. It was quiet. The silence was deafening. I tried to make sense of everything, but all I could hear were his words repeating in my mind. "You're nothing without me. You're weak without me." It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The more I stayed there, the more I realized I was losing myself. I couldn't remember who I used to be. I couldn't remember what I used to want. I started to doubt everything, even my own thoughts. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but I felt so small, so insignificant, I couldn't even cry anymore. And then something changed, a small spark of something. I saw the phone sitting on the counter. I had no idea how long it had been there. Maybe it was a sign. Maybe I had to do something. I grabbed it. My hands were shaking. I logged into Facebook. Elena's name popped up, my childhood friend. She had always been there for me, but I hadn't spoken to her in so long. I hadn't even tried. I didn't know if she'd understand. I didn't know if she'd believe me. But I typed 2 words, "Please help." Elena's reply came faster than I expected. She was concerned, of course, asking if I was okay, what was happening, but I couldn't tell her everything, not all at once. I didn't even know where to begin. How do you explain that everything you thought you knew about love was a lie? I told her I was stuck, that I didn't know how to get out of this anymore. She asked if I had tried to leave, but I couldn't even fathom that idea. Leaving wasn't an option. At least, that's what he told me. I believed him. He said, "You'll never make it on your own. Without me, you'll fall apart." And I started to believe him more than I believed myself. She asked me if I had a plan, if there was something I could do to get out. I didn't have an answer. I didn't have any plans anymore. The only plan was to make him happy, and if I failed, I would pay for it with his silence, his anger, his disappointment. The days passed in a blur. I didn't leave the house. I didn't go out for groceries, for walks, for anything. I was a ghost in my own life. And the worst part was, I didn't know how to wake up. I didn't know how to break the chains that had silently been wrapped around my soul. I started to feel my mind breaking too. I would forget things, small things, like where I put my keys or when I last ate. But sometimes I would forget entire conversations. Sometimes I'd forget who I was talking to. It wasn't just that he controlled where I went or who I saw. He controlled my thoughts. He made me feel like my feelings weren't valid, that my needs weren't real. But there was something deep inside me, A small voice that hadn't been completely silenced. I heard it when I was alone in the stillness of the night, when I dared to listen to my heart. That voice whispered, "You deserve better than this. You are worth more." But I was too afraid to listen. I was too afraid to believe it. One night I found the courage to reach out again. I messaged Elena and told her I needed help. "I don't know what to do. I can't breathe here. I don't know how to escape." Her response was immediate. "You don't have to do this alone. I'll help you." It was a lifeline. Her words were the first step, the first real sense of hope I'd felt in so long. I didn't know how or when, but I knew I had to start planning. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't stay in this prison of my own making. The next morning he was gone for a few hours, and I found the courage to leave the house. I went for a walk, trying to get my bearings. The sun felt warm on my skin, and for the first time in so long, I felt alive. I didn't know how long that feeling would last, but for those few minutes, I wasn't trapped. For the first time in what felt like forever, I had control over something. I could breathe. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know how I was going to leave or what would happen when I did. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay. I started making a plan. I reached out to a therapist. I called friends I hadn't spoken to in months. I started to realize that I wasn't as alone as I thought. But the hardest part was still ahead of me. He would come back, and he would know something had changed. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the storm that was coming, but I couldn't let fear control me anymore. I couldn't stay in that house, in that life, any longer. I had to leave. I had to reclaim myself. The days that followed were a blur of fear, anticipation, and a new kind of strength I hadn't known I possessed. I couldn't shake the feeling that he would return and somehow know that I was planning to leave, but I had to push through it. I had to move forward, even if it meant facing the storm head on. Elena helped me get in touch with a domestic violence shelter, something I never thought I'd need. But that was the first time I truly understood how serious it was. The signs had been there all along, but I had ignored them. I had believed that love was supposed to feel like this, that it was normal for someone to control every aspect of your life. But now I knew. It wasn't love. It was manipulation. It was control. It was abuse. As I gathered my things, I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt. I felt like I was betraying him, even though I knew I wasn't. Even though I knew I had every right to leave. I felt selfish for wanting something more than what he had given me. But I had to keep reminding myself that this wasn't a life. This wasn't living. This was survival. The night I left, I was terrified. I kept thinking he would come home early and catch me. I imagined him finding me, yelling, blaming me for everything, saying it was my fault. But I couldn't let that stop me anymore. I packed my things quickly, in silence, making sure not to leave anything behind. I left a note, but I didn't write what he wanted to hear. I wrote the truth. I wrote that I was leaving because I couldn't live like this anymore. Because I deserved more. Because I wasn't going to allow him to take any more from me. It wasn't easy to walk out that door. It felt like a piece of me was being torn away. But at the same time, there was a weight lifting off my chest that I didn't realize I had been carrying. I called Elena, and she was waiting for me, as promised. I didn't know where we would go or how long it would take, but I knew that, for the first time in a long time, I was safe. The shelter was small but warm. I could hear my heartbeat in the silence of the room, the only sound filling the space. I felt numb, like I was in shock, But I also felt something else. I felt relief. I felt free. I wasn't sure how long it would take to heal, but I knew I had taken the first step toward rebuilding my life. The first few days were the hardest. I had so many mixed emotions. I missed him, even though I knew I shouldn't. I kept telling myself that it wasn't my fault, that I wasn't weak, but every time I thought about the way he had controlled me, the way I had been manipulated, I felt sick. I started talking to a therapist. At first, I could hardly speak about what had happened without breaking down, but slowly I began to process it. I started to see the patterns of abuse that I had missed, the subtle ways he had isolated me, controlled me, and slowly taken away my sense of self. I began to realize how much strength it took to leave, and that realization was both terrifying and empowering. Over time, the fog began to lift. I started to remember who I was. I rediscovered the parts of myself I had forgotten. I started doing things for myself again. I began to see the beauty in the world, to appreciate the simple joys I had once taken for granted. And every small victory felt like a huge triumph. There were hard days. There were days when I missed him, when I questioned if I had made the right choice. But the more I learned about myself, the more I realized that I was worth so much more than the life I had been living. I wasn't just a shadow of who I used to be. I was me, strong, capable, and deserving of love that was kind and supportive, not controlling or toxic. It took time. It took a lot of time. But I finally understood that freedom wasn't just about leaving. It was about reclaiming my life. It was about remembering who I was before he ever came into the picture, and finding the courage to be that person again. I'm still healing. I'm still learning to trust myself. But I know now that no one has the right to control me. No one has the right to take away my voice, my choices, or my freedom, and I will never let anyone do that again. The road to freedom wasn't easy, but it was worth every step. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.